Cognitive dissonance, the policy that could not fail. The morning briefing room smelled faintly of coffee and printer ink as advisers gathered around the long conference table. At the head sat Minister Laura Schneider, flipping through a report with growing frustration. "This can't be right," she said. Across from her, policy analyst Martin Keller shifted uneasily in his chair. "I'm afraid the numbers are correct," he replied. "The program is costing more than projected, and the outcomes haven't improved." Laura closed the report slowly. 3 years earlier, she had championed the initiative as one of the most compassionate reforms in the country's modern history. The policy was designed to expand social services and integrate marginalized communities into the workforce through government-supported programs. At the time, the proposal had been widely praised. Now the data told a more complicated story. The tension Laura felt was something psychologists have studied for decades. In the 1950s, social psychologist Leon Festinger described a phenomenon called cognitive dissonance. It occurs when people hold two conflicting ideas at the same time. For example, "My policy is wise and beneficial. The results of my policy are disappointing." That conflict creates psychological discomfort. To resolve the discomfort, people often adjust how they interpret the evidence rather than abandoning a belief that has become part of their identity. Martin carefully laid out the findings. "Participation rates are lower than expected," he explained. "Several municipalities report administrative problems, and employment outcomes have not improved significantly." Laura tapped her pen against the table. "Maybe the municipalities didn't implement the program correctly," she said. "That's possible," Martin replied. He hesitated before continuing, "But some analysts believe the underlying assumptions of the policy may have been too optimistic." The room went quiet. Admitting that possibility would mean something more than adjusting a policy. It would mean questioning a core idea Laura had publicly defended for years. Political beliefs are rarely just intellectual positions. They become tied to personal identity, professional reputation, social alliances. Laura had built much of her political career on the promise that this reform represented a humane and effective solution. If the policy failed, critics would say the idea itself was flawed, but if the implementation had been flawed, then the idea could still be defended. The difference mattered enormously. A week later, Laura stood before a row of cameras. "The early results show that some regions have struggled to implement the program effectively," she announced. Her tone was calm and confident. "We will make adjustments to ensure the policy achieves its intended goals." Reporters scribbled notes. One raised a hand. "Minister Schneider, are you suggesting the concept itself might need reconsideration?" Laura paused for only a moment. "No," she said firmly. "The concept is sound. We simply need to improve the way it's carried out." Martin watched the press conference from his office. He understood Laura's reaction. In politics, abandoning a policy idea can feel like abandoning a part of oneself. But cognitive dissonance does not belong to one ideology. When conservatives see evidence that contradicts their preferred policies, they often respond in similar ways, blaming poor execution, external interference, or temporary conditions rather than the underlying idea. Humans rarely enjoy admitting that deeply held beliefs might be mistaken. Over the next 2 years, the program was modified repeatedly. Some components were quietly scaled back, others were redesigned. Laura never declared the original policy a failure. Instead, each change was presented as an improvement to an idea that remained fundamentally correct. To her supporters, this persistence demonstrated commitment. To her critics, it looked like a refusal to acknowledge reality. Both interpretations contained a measure of truth. Late one evening, Martin reread the original proposal Laura had written years earlier. It had been thoughtful, hopeful, and sincere. He realized something important. Cognitive dissonance does not emerge because people are dishonest. It emerges because people care deeply about the beliefs that define their worldview. Changing those beliefs requires not only intellectual reconsideration, but also emotional and social risk. In politics and in life, evidence rarely arrives with perfect clarity. When new information conflicts with existing beliefs, people often reinterpret that information in ways that preserve their identity and prior commitments. This tendency appears across the political spectrum because it is rooted in human psychology, not ideology. Recognizing cognitive dissonance does not automatically solve political disagreements, but it can reveal something important about them. Many debates continue not because one side lacks evidence, but because both sides are defending ideas that have become part of who they believe themselves to be. And beliefs tied to identity are often the hardest ones to change.